Audible? Great. That happens often. I am Susmita. So, hello, welcome. Thank you all for joining us. And breaking news, I mean, as a reporter, journalist myself, I can tell you that it's speed is the game for news. There is very little else in the world that comes close to the adrenaline rush that you get with breaking news first. And of course, being right is non-negotiable. And here we are, of course, as mediums evolved, speed and breaking news first has become central to at least television and online more so, right? And so that brings us to today's discussion, and where we are not only going to discuss how this matters to viewers who, of course, want their news first from a channel of their preference, and also the right news first, but how it matters to the business of journalism and the business of news channels. So I would like to begin maybe by asking our audience here, given that everybody is from the business of news, if you can use the technology that Shrikant, explained to all of you earlier today. That's right. So, can you tell me what is your sense of what drives the new business of news? Is breaking news the one that really gives an edge to news channels? Is that what's primary? So, red if it's no, and green if. Okay, so I see some greens. Everybody, it's really simple technology, guys. Great, so I'm seeing a lot of green here. Oh, somebody's confused. So red, green, okay. Great, so I think there is an overwhelming majority of green, and that does set the tone for our discussion here. I would like to start with each of you, Anup, I'll start with you. If you can tell me what breaking news means to both a news channel and the consumer, how that drives their allegiances to news channels, and eventually that trickles down to business as well.
See, fundamentally, breaking news is important, especially in the English segment, okay? Because you're talking to an influential India, and therefore, there is a certain amount of value that people seek in terms of knowing things faster, okay? The breaking news quotient, when it comes to a different audience segment, when it is the Hindi news, for example, or regional news, it is not so much about valuableness, it's about wanting to know things of mass interest, and as quickly as possible. So, it could be news of a new CM, it could be the news of death, it could be the news of whatever, So those are things that is of bigger significance for an audience. So depending on audience, breaking news becomes relevant and important in a very different way, So that's the way we look at breaking news. So I think all the cards are right. Green is right, and so is red. It just depends on who is at the receiving end of this information.
Mr. Manoj, Jagyasi, if you can tell me, being a young channel and entering the space right now, how are you viewing the kind of content that you might design for the channel and the audiences that you serve?
Okay, well, let me just begin by saying thanks to Shrikant for bringing all of us together, because what we are discussing today is the future of news, which obviously Shashi was also saying is bright. So all of us believe the same, that the future of news is very bright. So look, now when it comes to breaking news, let me just, pull you back to 1980s era, when we used to have Salma Sultan or, Shami Narang used to come and read the news for that particular 1 hour, and cut to now 24 hours of news battle which is going on. So here, for a breaking news perspective, when we are a pretty new channel, pretty young channel, how we are looking at breaking news is completely differently. Because since we are not now at this point of time chasing those rating points, obviously eventually we will have to, because if you want to win the business, you need those rating points also. But in Bharat 24, how are we looking at that for the viewers, that every news which you put up across on a screen cannot be a breaking news. So we have segmented the news between two parameters. One is if it is a big news, we call it as a breaking news. If it is not so much of a big news, we call it as a nayi khabar. So that viewer can also differentiate on the content which is going on. And second, in a day, we break about 1,000 to 1,200 stories on our channel. Because 30% of this space has been occupied by the breaking news band which we have. So that, the viewers who are watching in MP and UP and across country, because on the screen time, you have 70% of the screen where you can show audio visual. But the 30% of the band that we use it very smartly. Out of which 200 stories which is pretty exclusive to us. Because the network that we have created, we have about 4,000 people on ground reporting for Bharat 24 on a day in, day out basis, which obviously what Shashi was just talking about sameness. I think that's the question we've been asked, all of us, when we go out in the market to speak to our advertisers, that 80% of the time the news on the across channels are same. How do you differentiate? Okay. So simple method that I always tell them, that more foods that you have it on ground, you get the news very, very fast and accurate. So for speed with accuracy is very, very important also, which is one of the topics that you want to discuss. So yes, we are looking at very, very differently the breaking news on our channel at least.
Your thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Shrikant. Thank you, Sushmita, and thank you, Nikhil, for having us here. Breaking news fundamentally has to be a real big news, as he rightly said, and I agree with him. You have to see the magnitude of the news, okay? And being a national channel or a regional channel, again, the breaking news has to be according to that. If you're a national channel, when you're breaking a news, it has to be of that magnitude. Say, for example, if there is a traffic jam in Bombay, which is going to delay the people's coming back home from office by a couple of hours, then it's a very big news for Bombay, but it can be a news flash on a news channel. But if there is an earthquake which is coming to India, which has got severe impact across different parts of the country, then that's a real breaking news. We have kind of, the difference between breaking news, news flash, regular news have kind of become blurred because we want to create some, there are a lot of channels which want to create some sensation and stuff like that. You have to be very responsible. आप क्या break कर रहे हो और उसका impact क्या होगा viewers पे? Because as a channel, say for example, India TV has been in the market since 2004. We are an 18-year-old channel and we are extremely stable, consistent. So आपका एक responsibility है. आपके बातों पे viewers believe करता है. You have trust. And as I always tell my team also, trust is, there's no percentage of trust. Either it is 0 or it is 100. I cannot trust you 73.99%, correct? So the fact is that your viewers believe what you are saying. And if they believe what you are saying, then it's your responsibility to say things and the magnitude, considering the magnitude, as something basis which they can take a call. Speed, extremely important. But accuracy is also very important, and it depends. I'm a little surprised that majority of the people feel that breaking news is very important. If you talk about business aspect, which I'll discuss again later, from business aspect, not at all. There are so many colleagues of mine whom I've worked with, whom I'm working with right now. Even I know Manoj for quite some time. Let us ask our heart, if we break 30% more breaking news, are our advertisers going to pay us 10% more? No way. So let's be clear about what we are doing. We need to respect our channel. We need to respect the people that we are talking to. It's about the audience. Entire media plan is not about media. It's about the audience that you are addressing. And to address that audience, they need to have trust on you. That's how ratings will come. If you're on the right track, ratings will follow. That's not a big deal.
Absolutely. We'll come back to discussing some of those points that you just raised. Anup, something you said about the English news consumers wanting that speed and breaking news, is that because the English news audience is possibly also getting the news first from social media, is because maybe platforms like Twitter are becoming the first destination where people are getting their news, and therefore news channels are having to compete with the digital medium, maybe their own digital verticals as well, and that brings in some sort of business conflict, and therefore breaking news is taking up, is it taking up a lot of time on news channels?
News channels are essentially competing with the event itself. Forget about Twitter or anything else. So the question is, if it is relevant to the audience that you are talking to, then of course you need to bring it to them as quickly as possible. What is the edge that a news channel gives you is a credibility quotient of that news. So we have stopped using terms like speed, fast, whatever. For us, it's about more news per minute. It comes with a certain kind of precision, and it is delivered in a particular manner. See, news is news, okay? People come to consume it on the basis of a certain kind of tonality differentiation on our channels. Okay, so for example, we have Times Now, Now Bharat, we have MRN, which is Mirror Now, and ET Now. So I keep telling people we want to introduce you to Rohit Shetty, Raju Hirani, and Karan Johar. Okay, because anytime you come to watch, news is news. Okay, in what tonality do you give it? So if you look at Times Now and Now Bharat, it's like a Rohit Shetty movie. Okay, at any given point of time, there is action, it's loud. It's loud because we are unabashedly loud, because India is loud, our markets are loud, sometimes, Bollywood is loud, sometimes, unfortunately, even our homes are loud. So news comes to you in a way which is in that tone. In Mirror Now, we give you news which is like watching a Raju Hirani film. Okay, it will be interesting, very engaging, the kind of changes that people want to see, etc. With ET Now, it's like a Karan Johar movie. The balcony audience fills up first, and then the rest of the audience comes in. And people want only one thing: I need to be richer at 4 o'clock than I was at 10 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so this broadly, because it's about stock markets. Okay, so there is a very clear view of what each of these audience segments value. And when you say breaking news, you need to be very clear on which of these platforms you want to give news which is relevant to them, that they can use and that they can profit by, if it is a business channel, or if it is a news channel, they can take decisions in a more relevant manner. So these are the audience segments that we have, and we cater to them in that particular way. So you're right, speed, you need to add a certain amount of precision, you need to add certain amount of credibility. So these are things that we keep adding to our news capsules. So we have stopped using some of these terminologies because of evolving consumer tastes and requirements from us. So that's the thing.
Thank you. Manoj, you mentioned, and rightly Mr. Shashi Sinha also said, there is sameness. News is also that kind of business where everybody's talking about the same thing. Whatever made news during the day is what's being discussed, say, at prime time, and whatever is breaking then is the breaking news at that minute. So differentiation becomes a core, issue. And like Anup just said, I think within the Times News Network, the three of them have been differentiated as Rohit Shetty, Karan Johar, and Raju Hirani. So with your perspective, I would like to bring in here, because you're also in a very cluttered environment where there are a lot of news channels and everybody is giving the same news. So how do you then differentiate yourself in this market? Would you say that analysis, going on ground, like you also mentioned, investing behind resources, putting them on the ground, getting news from the trenches, so to say, is where the differentiator is?
I think, you need to look at news from a different angle altogether. When we talk about credibility, everywhere you go, every advertiser, viewers, there are two things which is going on right now. One is credibility. Another is the issue of fake news, which is surrounding us, haunting us day and out. So how do you kind of put across the credibility? And the second point was, Shashi was also mentioning the sameness. Let me just break up into three points here. In order to, address the issue of sameness, what we have trying, and we've done it successfully, is that, 80% of the time, like I said, the news is same on across all channels. How really we differentiate the kind of anchors who are reading the news? If the viewer are pretty much familiar with the anchor, there are high chances they'll stick around, and probably they'll look at how this particular anchor is analyzing that particular story. So that's how you need to kind of address the issue of sameness. And second, how do you address credibility issue? Credibility is something is very, very dear to all the, CXO sitting here or probably in the boardroom, that how do you address this credibility issue? Because that also brings a lot of faith from advertisers also, that this particular news channel has credible news sources also. So how do we do it? So for example, every news broadcaster has their input, output, XYZ departments. So we have created a different department altogether, which not many broadcasters have been doing it right now. For example, we have 20 people sitting in something called control room with at least 30 phone lines, for 30 hotlines, where if reporter gets about particular news, he has to call up that hotline first, and the guys who are sitting in control room, they have to verify if we are taking this news on air or not. So that's how you kind of attack the issue of credibility also. And third, let me also just, without taking the name of the broadcaster, there was this Ukraine story which was there from last 6 months, what Shashi was also mentioning, okay? And there was this story of Sushant Singh Rajput, what's happened in last 1 year. So few of the broadcaster was not aware, when to drop that particular story. You cannot stretch one particular story for 6, 7, 8 months, okay? So there's a viewer fatigue comes in. And this is also connected with your boardroom. If you do not have experienced people sitting in your boardroom or newsroom, the same story will continue for long, because in their mind, they are thinking that this is giving them ratings. So this is all connected with the right kind of people that you are deploying in your newsrooms also.
Thank you. And Sudipto, I want to go back to one of the points you just mentioned, and bringing in what Manoj also just said about how maybe breaking news, credibility of news, each of these, how does it matter to the advertiser? You made a very bold statement just now. You said it really doesn't matter. Why does it not matter to the advertiser? That's one thing I want you to maybe start with, and then we can...
I'll handle it in two parts, because we are in Future of News event, so I will take that route first and then come to your point that what are those... generally I'm known for bold statements which are very close to being suicidal, but then it's okay. So I'll start off with the Future of News kind of angle, because that's what we are here for. See, in a country like ours, where you have 1.4 billion population, there are about 22 languages, 720 dialects, 7 religion, 210 million TV households, 800 plus, youth, 88% of youth population, okay? 800 million plus youth population. So those kind of things, it's a huge country, it's a very diverse country. Every 100 kilometers, your language changes, your food habit changes. So news is extremely important, as Mr. Shashi Sinha said, that you have to know it daily. And news will be very relevant for next many years in different forms. When I say news, I'm talking about online, television, newspaper, everything. Okay, news is going to remain there. And as far as Future of News is concerned, it is bright, it's beautiful, it's very nice. And we need to believe that as broadcasters. If we don't believe it, nobody else will believe us. One. Two, is that when it comes to the credibility factor, as he was saying, what is credibility is that when you say and do the same thing over and over again, and the people watching you see that. However, the overall quality of viewers or the quality of the news viewing or overall content viewing has deteriorated a bit. Okay, सत्यमेव जयते को उतना number नहीं मिलता है जितना नागिन को मिलता है. So it's a fact of life. I mean, if we get into the data, it will be proven. So the fact is that we have to consider that aspect as well. So because end of the day, एक basic number, everybody needs a basic number because you have to go out to the market and sell to an extent. Number is not very important, but it's to an extent it is important because it's an indicator. Now coming to what you said that, you know, the advertisers angle. First of all, when it comes to breaking news, we need to, as I said, that the quality of the magnitude of the news or the news that I am flashing is very important. Brahmastra as a movie has crossed a certain business figure. Good, important news. But ये news अगर मैं 10:30 बजे की जगह 11:30 सुनूंगा, क्या हो जाएगा? कुछ नहीं, nothing. Correct? But शाम को 5 बजे earthquake आ रहा है, ये अगर मैं 2 मिनट भी डिले करूंगा, उसमें बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम हो सकता है. So we need to, that is one very important aspect as far as the news aspect is concerned. However, that's an editorial part and I do not qualify to comment on that fundamentally. So I'll comment on the business part is that nobody is bothered whether you are breaking 123 breaking news or 256 breaking news. Your advertiser is bothered about few things which are very critical and we rarely talk about those things. One is that your consistency as a channel and content delivery platform. Are you consistent? जब मैं आपको कैंपेन दे रहा हूँ, तब आप नंबर 1 पे हो. जब मेरा कैंपेन खत्म हो रहा है, आप नंबर 5 पे हो. तो मेरा पोस्ट टेबल की तो ऐसी तैसी हो गई. 1. 2. Is that whether you are executing my spots in the right way, because I, as a marketer, would like to see my brand in a particular environment. ठीक है? एक BMW ad के बाद आप अगर कुछ अजीब सा एक ad चलाओगे, so that is something which a BMW marketer will, I mean, marketing head will never like. We never talk about that. Whether the spots are being equally placed or not. These are the things on basis which the look and feel of the channel. If the look and feel of the channel is soothing, like in case of India TV, if you see the color combination and the way the screen is kept clutter-free, it's soothing to look at. Maybe that is one of the reasons that we have highest time spent over years. So I'm saying there are little things which need to be addressed, which need to be told to the client. When it comes to content differentiation, fundamentally news will never be, content differentiation will not be noticed in news per se. Because if there is a bridge which has fallen down, most of the channels or, you know, platforms will show a bridge has fallen down. But on the overall, you need to have, there are content differentiation programs which you need to have. Okay, so there are recorded programs, there can be live programs which are going to be very different, which are going to be completely clutter breaker. So you need to have the right mix. Okay, so that is very important. It is not about breaking news. It is an asset. Breaking news definitely is an asset. But then again, every coin has got two sides. Okay, how you use it is very important. You know, AK-47 was invented by somebody, but he definitely did not invent it for the terrorists to use it, right? So, galat use hoga to galat hoga.
Absolutely. Anup, if I can bring you in, you know, in your conversations with marketers and what you learn from audiences as well, is it that the pressure on the business pressure is kind of also driving news channels to kind of audiences in some way, get them to, you know, say, oh, we have breaking news coming in. And then, you know, the person is waiting, and then maybe, you know, it's maybe like you said, a small inanity that is breaking news. Is breaking news becoming a little hook to get the attention of the viewer? Because it's also that there are so many channels, people flip between channels and then settle on something. They spend very little time maybe watching a single channel, and this is that hook to get people to linger around for a little longer, and then finally viewership obviously goes up and therefore advertisers come in.
See, There are various ways of hooking people. Okay, now a lot of people keep talking about why is so much of war being shown. Okay, what is the hook for war? Okay, now people are consuming war for three reasons. One is it's an event that brings you closest to death. Okay, the second reason that they are watching war is because when you say disturbing images, okay, people really want to see those disturbing images. Okay. And the third, honestly, at a mass level, the biggest reason is Russia and Ukraine have some of the most beautiful people on this planet. Okay, so a lot of people are concerned to know how many of them will survive and how many of them will die. Okay, so that's the honest truth as to why people are watching news. Okay, there are also people who would watch news because they would want to know whether if there is a bombing happening in Russia, will it affect the oil supply to India. You know, so you have different audience interest, and as a news broadcaster, you address every aspect of interest to people. Okay, that is also relevant, without forming too much of value judgments on why people would want to watch this kind of news. Okay, you need to cater to everyone, and some of these things which are coming out will have a certain, like what Sudipto said, there will be a certain amount of importance quotient, like the earthquake example he gave, to a certain segment of people, So the thing is, you tend to use that as another way of hook. But breaking news alone is not a hook. You need to look at, what really makes for viewership of a particular form of content and use all of them as hooks. That's the way you need to look at news.
Got it. And Manoj, if I can bring you in also, we have about 4.5 minutes left. If you can also wrap up your thoughts about, to the advertiser, how much does the content that goes on to a news channel, how much does it matter from in the sense of, will I advertise on this news channel or not? How does that play a role? What role does that play?
So very interesting, let me just also give you a small numbers to it. For example, we are now 100 days old channel, and we got 100 brands running on the channel, despite the fact that the ratings are not out. You know why? Because your advertisers are themselves are viewers of your channel. So most of the buying happens, obviously rating does play their important role, with their gut feeling also. Okay, they have their liking or disliking towards particular channel. Okay. And the content they want to consume. For example, we spoke to about 300 people before we launched our channel Bharat 24. So this was one of the questions that we asked about breaking news. And from there only we came out of this new terminology called Nahi Khabar. Because most of them said that every news that we see it on the news channels are breaking news. For example, एक आदमी वहाँ से एयरपोर्ट से चढ़ा है दिल्ली से बॉम्बे जाने के लिए कोई पॉलिटिशियन. So that cannot be a breaking news on any national platform. So if you want to put it, devise new terminology. Maybe you call it as a news flash, you are nahi khabar, or whatever you want to call it. Because all of us need to understand, whenever we go out for our pitches, at least 70% of the time you speak to your advertiser about the current happenings around the news channels. They are least bothered about that, what effective rate you are selling at or not. They are more and more interested to know that what is happening in the current scenario. Because which also indicate, they are not talking too much about what's happening in Nagin's episode today. Aaj Big Boss mein kya hua? They will ask you about, acha RBI ki policy hai, isme kya lag raha hai? What is going to happen in budget? So you need to understand your advertiser is also a viewer of your channel. So whatever we are also devising our content strategy is also around the same.
And Sudipto, any closing remarks that you have? Not a liability from your point of view, I guess.
Yeah, definitely not a liability. It's an asset for sure. But then again, as I was telling right in the beginning, that there's a lot of responsibility. We have documented evidence in the past, in 2008, I guess, when the Taj attack happened. most of the channels were breaking news. And the other side of the coin was that people were getting information from there to attack as per those news. We need to be responsible, one. Two, when it comes to advertisers, they have no right, and I repeat myself, they have no right to talk about our content. Whatever is the content, doesn't matter. If I make the content, hypothetically, say 30% better, as per his liking, is he going to give me 10-15% more pricing? No. Then they will bring in CPRP, then they will bring in, overall GRP reducing for the news genre and all these things. So if you cannot, the way I do not have a choice to tell any of the brands कि आप अपना raw material कहाँ से लोगे, I don't have a choice there. I can't make a comment out there. Similarly, an advertiser, they can talk about the deliveries that they get. They can talk about the execution of their spots. They can talk about a good post-eval vis-a-vis a pre-eval so that बहुत ज़्यादा difference ना हो. Point taken, proper time spent, proper reach, complete, agree. But content, not at all, no way. Okay, and we should not even allow them. And this is a request to all the colleagues sitting out here. We keep listening to all these things and we come back and we discuss about, stop discussing those things. Just go and tell those people कि boss, मैं 15% अच्छा करता हूँ, आप मुझे 20% ऊपर rate दोगे क्या? Listen to their answers and you will be convinced yourself. So no way they can talk about it. Overall, we need to respect ourselves, we need to believe in ourselves, go ahead and sell honestly, we'll make monies.
Anup, you agree with Sudipto?
Totally agree with him on that. We don't go and tell them, listen, change the formulation of your product. We are not into those kind of things. See, there is a certain honesty with which I think broadcasters look at their audiences and viewers, and there is a certain amount of belief, in terms of serving news in a way that is true and that is also aggregating a lot of viewer interest. I think everyone is free to have their own opinions, but I don't think we have to be guided by those opinions. That's the view I have.
Time's up, but I have one question for the audience. All of you, I guess, from the news broadcasting fraternity. When you go approach marketers, how many of them speak to you about the content that your channel serves up? Green for yes and red for no? Green is yes, that people speak to you about the content on your channels? Burgundy as yes. So, okay, I see a lot of greens. Okay, that's an overwhelming majority. So marketers are concerned about the content on news channels, but the broadcasters definitely don't want them to question any of that. So I think that's a great point to end on. I think the business interest stays, and that's the future of news. Thank you, everybody.
One small thing before we call it quits, because one thing Mr. Shashi Sinha said very importantly, which I don't know how many of us noticed, is that when it comes to news channels, especially I'm mostly talking about Hindi news as a category, Hindi national news channels. Trust me, data will show that the kind of reach which the GC as a genre can build up in, say, 2 weeks, max 3 weeks. The same reach can be built up by news in a period of over 8 to 9 weeks. Okay? So if it is a launch campaign of a particular product or service, it's very important that you spend a lot on GEC because you need to quickly have that reach. But if those are sustenance campaigns and stuff like that, so the same reach will be achieved by a combination of news channels over a period of 8 to 9 weeks at 1/4 or 1/5 the cost. So news channels are extremely lucrative if you understand the business. If you don't, and if you just go and the discussion hovers around the rate and agency incentive diya to mujhe kya milega type, it's not heading anywhere.